In the time before time, on the mysterious island of Matanui, 6 canisters washed ashore on a golden beach, and new and powerful legends were born. Tahu, courageous Toa of fire. Liwa, agile Toa of air. Gali, noble Toa of water. Kopaka, powerful Toa of ice. Onua, wise Toa of earth. Teamed up with Pohatu, mighty Toa of stone, they battled the darkness of Makuta and the terrible menaces he unleashed that threatened the Toa and the world. From 2001 to 2010, these heroes fought valiantly to save the world from darkness and helping to influence the childhood of kids ages 7 to 16 around the globe. Not only was BIONICLE a breakthrough in storytelling at LEGO, the theme helped save them from bankruptcy in the early 2000s. Alas, no matter how well our heroes fought, they were brought down by the greatest evil of all, corporate mandates. In 2010, BIONICLE ended and was replaced with Hero Factory. Never catching on the way its predecessor did, Hero Factory floundered and tried to find its footing for 5 years, but it just wasn't meant to be. In the time since BIONICLE ended, those that had grown up with the theme had entered high school or college. Many had left LEGO behind as they grew older, but others held on to our collections of plastic bricks and slowly disintegrating lime joint pieces. The legend of BIONICLE became nostalgic, and many believed that we would never see our beloved characters again. Suddenly in 2014, that all changed. The annual Toy Leaks began, and along with the typical Star Wars and Ninjago sets was something else, something more mystical, something with gear functions. While skeptical at first, it soon became obvious that our dreams were coming true. BIONICLE was coming back. On January 1st, 2015, the second generation of BIONICLE officially began. The original 6 heroes were rebuilt and re-released in a new world with new villains to face. At New York Comic Con the previous October, LEGO promised 3 years of toys and story were on the way, and for the fans that held out for 5 long years, this was the answer to all our hopes and dreams. However, it wasn't meant to be. While the toys were some of the best toys BIONICLE had ever seen, the story wasn't up to par. 90-second animations released sporadically on LEGO's website told the story of the Toa and their quest to save Okoto. The limited running time these animations sported left little time for character development or complex plots. Still, hope wasn't completely gone. By the end of 2015, it was confirmed that the theme would receive a Netflix series, a massive upgrade in storytelling. However, the word series ended up being a bit of an over-exaggeration. BIONICLE The Journey to One only lasted for 4 episodes in 2016, and while the animation and art style were widely praised, the story, arguably one of the most important factors of BIONICLE, was a trash fire. The characters still weren't well defined, the plot was simplistic, and the ending made no sense whatsoever. With the release of the final 2 episodes, it became clear what was happening. On July 29, 2016, LEGO announced the second generation of BIONICLE had come to a premature end. 4 years ago today. Like many, I was heartbroken. The next month or so I grieved along with everyone else as I moved into college to start my freshman year. With the second cancellation, it seemed my childhood was officially over. However, as I mulled over the rushed ending and plot points didn't make any sense, an ember of creativity still burned deep within me. After all, what is any LEGO theme without a sense of creativity? I began to rewrite the story in my head to fix the broken plot points and fill in holes. Story arcs began to take shape, and I realized that I couldn't keep these ideas to myself as a personal headcanon. In need of a new series on my channel and most of the G2 collection already acquired, I rolled up my sleeves and began writing. Before long, the first season of BIONICLE Reiterated had taken shape, and 2 more seasons mapped out. After filming the first season in the summer of 2017 and assembling a cast, the first season officially launched in December of that year. The term reiterated certainly fit, as the first season is pretty faithful to the official 2015 story we received, just with extra time added in for getting to know the characters and seeing them grow. The second season followed in 2018, diverting more from the official story than Season 1 had. In Season 2, I pulled from G1 and introduced Akmau, setting the seeds for an agent of Makuta to be lurking in the shadows. Umarak's story was changed but not elaborated on, that would come later, and loose plot elements that were left dangling in the Journey to One were given a purpose and a place to fit into the story. With the second season wrapping up in the spring of 2019, it was time to wrap up the story itself. We had been promised 3 years, so I was going to give fans the 3 stories for those 3 years. As the story began to fall into place, I knew that I wouldn't have enough story to make up a 3rd season, so the decision was made to instead reformat it into a finale movie. With the working title of The Dark Portal, named after the final episode of The Journey to One, I got writing in May of 2019. After a few days, the script was finalized, reaching nearly 100 pages in total. With school wrapping up for the semester, I was ready to officially begin production on the finale. Alright, hello everyone, Prentice1215 here. Today is June the 5th. It is approximately 10:30
1:30 a.m. About ready to get started on officially beginning filming of Reiterated Season 3. I've got my green screen all set up here. As you can see, I've got the script open on the computer over there. I've got the figures ready to go behind me. Makuta is constructed and ready to go. So, yeah, we're going to be starting the end of the beginning today. For the occasion, I am wearing the Makuta control shirt from the TTV channel, hashtag not sponsored. So it's been quite the journey. It's 2019. I started planning all this stuff out in late 2016, so it's been about 3 years. It's been about 2 years since I filmed season 1. It was about this time in 2017 when I filmed season 1. So it's been quite the journey, and I'm excited to wrap it up and see how everything turns out. So with that said, without any further ado, let's get started.
The biggest change at the end of Season 2 to divert from the official story was bringing Makuta in to personally battle the Toa. Possessing Umrak's body and turning his armor red, we now had a purpose for the red Mask of Shadows that came with the Akimu the Mask Maker set that had no mention in the official story. The Makuta mock was a simple one to make, as it was a color swap of Umrak and a few minor adjustments. He lost the horns, one of his arms, and the shadow-trapped shoulder pads. The new Makuta was also granted a new weapon, a Shadow Scythe. Since the final showdown would mirror the official ending to Journey to 1, and since the Makuta combo model from that show is so delicate, I decided to place the epic showdown between heroes and villains at the front of the finale. This way, the threat of Makuta would visually be stated as he stomps on our heroes, and it would set the tone for the rest of the finale. Characters would be desperate, the villain would be confident, and the end of the world would be approaching. Of course, there was one small issue. The Toa couldn't battle Makuta just once before the finale, or else it would be boring. No action, what is an adventure franchise? That won't do. Of course, at the same time, the Toa also couldn't battle Makuta several times throughout the finale, or else the ending would lose its punch. So Makuta would need some minions. Thankfully, this is a problem that I perceived long in advance and set up the story accordingly. Akmao is a character from G1 that always fascinated me, and I wish that more had been done with him near the end of the line's run. At one point, the Takanuva Titan set from 2008 was originally going to be a Toa of Shadow Akmao set, and personally, I would have preferred that to what we got. Since G2 was a reboot, it gave me license to use old characters in new ways, case in point, Akmao. While different compared to his G1 counterpart, he serves the same purpose. He's an agent of Makuta amongst the inhabitants of the island. Unlike G1, however, I added a sense of tragedy to the story by making him an unwitting pawn. Manipulated by Makuta in secret, Akmao was groomed for his role as Makuta's Toa of Shadow. This story was set up in Season 2 and paid off in the finale, where at long last Akmao got a Shadow Toa form. My original idea for the mock was to have him match Bohatu Uniter's color scheme with some black thrown in. However, once I ordered the parts from Bricklink, I realized I had ordered the wrong color CCBS shells. So I instead ordered the burnt orange-brown shells to match Akmao's infected mask. The final mock turned out quite well, and had this been an actual set that was in production, I imagine it would have had both the waist and arm gear functions like Akimu the Mask Maker had. But for my purposes, I didn't bother adding those in. One goon isn't enough of a threat though. Akmao needed a partner. At first I thought I might go with one of the Skull Villain combo models, but raising those characters from the dead a second time, even as a combined mass of bones, would cheapen death in the story. Raising characters from the dead once is one thing, but doing it twice is another thing entirely. So I went on designing a new villain. With a checklist of things I wanted the new foe to look like, I made a few preliminary sketches and added a pair of talons on his back to make him look more like a creature. I was satisfied with the look, but realized something. The design would have made for a great humanoid form for the Lord of Skull Spiders. So I placed my convictions about not raising any more characters from the dead aside and decided to reanimate the Lord of Skull Spiders in a new body. Going for a spindly and frail look combined with a spider aesthetic, New Lost shares a color scheme with his 2015 counterpart, even a similar build when it comes to the spider legs. Unlike Makuta and Akmao though, Lost doesn't have a handheld weapon since he himself is a living weapon. Or undead weapon, whichever. This wasn't all in terms of villains for the finale though. One of my first ideas for Reiterated that I fought to make work was the inclusion of a dimension-hopping Vizon to serve as a link between G1 and G2, more on that later. Vizon is an unorthodox villain, being a force of chaos and destruction rather than being straight evil. His misadventures in the G1 serial certainly proved him to be a foe to be taken seriously though. Bringing him in took care, as I had to be authentic to the G1 portrayal of his character since he was plucked straight out of that world and placed into this rebooted one. In terms of his design, I did little to alter the original toy. His cape had torn a bit, so I added in some Technic pins to hold it in place and swapped out his original hands with 09 Glatorian style hands so he could match the other characters who had hands with molded in fingers. While I had the original Vizon and Finrak set from 2006, I had to rebuild Vizon from scratch since he was in pieces. Thankfully, all of his parts were scattered in the same big tub of loose parts I have, and it didn't take too long to reassemble him. With Makuta, Akmau, Lost 2.0, and Vazon ready to face the Toa, our heroes certainly had their work cut out for them in this final story. Since I had initially planned the finale as a season rather than a movie, the story was structured towards an episodic nature. If one is observant enough, you can pick out the start and stop of the different acts, or episodes that were combined to form the finale. Act 1 ends with Makuta defeating the Toa and walking away triumphantly. Act 2 ends with Akmau's defeat and Vizon making a pact with Makuta to lure them towards the maze. Act 3 ends with Vizon's subsequent defeat and Ikimu's transformation into his Toa form, and of course the end of Act 4 signals the end of the finale and the series as a whole. Each of these acts was originally intended to be an episode, and while I planned for the finale to be a movie rather than a season, I still didn't know if it would work pacing-wise because of the way it had initially been planned out. Thankfully, I think the pacing works quite well. Everyone gets their own little time to shine in one way or the other. Writing a good story can be hard enough, but ending it is even more challenging. The ending to The Journey to One had some good concepts and visuals, but the plot was so muddled and hashed together at the last minute that nothing made sense. So when it came to trying to adapt it, I had to pick and choose what to use and what to throw out. In terms of what we see in the final episode of Journey to One, I threw out the majority of what happened minus the big details such as the Dark Portal and the Toa sacrificing themselves to save the island. One annoying plot point that I threw out from the start was the Prophecy of Light. The way it is presented in the story is so mind-bogglingly stupid that I don't even want to talk about it because I feel like I lose brain cells just thinking about it. The bad guy has a prophecy on a wall in his house and he does nothing to stop it? He just goes along with it? It really goes to show you how well Makuta Pterodax was written in G1, since when he was confronted with a similar situation, the forces of good changed the prophecy to trick him into thinking he was altering the course of history. So with the Prophecy of Light headache that G2 gave us, I threw that out before I even began writing Season 1. Well, I threw out the execution. The concept I kept and changed to make interesting. This ended up being one of the things that I wouldn't have touched on had it not been teased to death, but from the start I knew I was going to make a connection to G1 and G2, probably to some people's chagrin. It probably wouldn't have helped much, but G2 would have been much better served as a complete reboot without any mention of the Konohi Vahi. As stated by designers at LEGO, they included references to the Mask of Time in the story to fuel speculation, but didn't have a definitive answer about it themselves. The top half was in G2, while the bottom half was in G1, as we'd known it for years. To me, that says that G1 and G2 are connected, but others would probably argue against that, and for good reason. However, the fact that we never got answers about the Vahi in official G2 drove me up the wall, so one of my first decisions alongside bringing in Vazon was deliberately making a connection to G1 with the Vahi, and to further drive home that connection, I turned the elemental creatures from 2016 into the Great Beings. Potentially controversial, not that I've seen it though since COPPA doesn't allow comments, but after extensive research on BSO1, I didn't see anything that would have made this impossible. The most concrete details we have on the Great Beings is that they were Glatorian and they kinda sucked. That's it. Having the Great Beings park their lab and create Okoto feels like the sort of thing that would happen in a G1 serial. It also explains the connection between the Toa Okoto and the Toa Nuva, as well as the other G1 influences on this new world. If the Mask of Time hadn't been a thing, then it would have been so easy for G2 to be a reboot and we wouldn't have had to deal with questioning the potential connections. And in all honesty, I would have preferred that. But that's not what happened, so in an effort to keep Reiterated as true to G2 as possible while still delivering a good story, I felt like it needed to be addressed. So with the wall of exposition discovered, we get one of my favorite parts about Bionicle in general, let alone the finale, Makuta's master plan. Makuta Pterodax is up there as one of the most strategic and complex villains in all of fiction. Having G2 Makuta be a growling idiot who can't even bother to change a prophecy to his advantage was really disappointing. So I thought to myself, why would he not do something about the prophecy? G1 Makuta excelled at using his phone's plans and goals against them. The Toa Nuva want to wake up the Great Spirit? Awesome, I'll just replace him so when they wake him up, I'll be the one they wake up instead of Mazanui. Pterodax spent 8 of Bionicle G1's 9 years running circles around our heroes without us knowing it. So I thought, why would Makuta let the Toa fulfill this prophecy if he knows it will destroy him? Well, to put it simply, he would let them try and fulfill it if he didn't think they actually could. The nature of destiny and free will has been a popular topic of discussion in the Bionicle community thanks to the way the G1 story played out, but the story itself has never really delved into that topic. Are the characters sentient? Do they have free will? You decide when you pay $12.95 for your brand new Baraki. Leaving some things up to discussion can be good, and in terms of G1, it certainly adds to some mysticism of the world. With G1 well established though, and G2 available to go in new directions, why not make that part of the story? I didn't officially begin writing the first scripts back in 2016 until I found an interesting new angle to add to the finale and give it an extra punch and semblance of importance. turning the story into a debate about free will versus predestination that doesn't offer one definitive answer but several to get the conversation to continue after the credits roll? There's an interesting angle to retell the story with. So while Makuta knows how the Toa can defeat him, he doesn't destroy them or the wall because he doesn't think they can. Makuta is cynical, his jealousy slowly turning him evil, and he can only see the worst in people. That includes their selfish tendencies like self-preservation. When the Toa have been told what they have to do instead of figuring out on their own, Makuta is of the belief that they'll crumble and falter with indecision, and they almost do. Makuta has essentially shown the Toa the script to the movie and is using that to his advantage, as opposed to doing nothing about it, which is what he did in Journey to One. At the end of the day, though, Makuta is still defeated because he's wrong. Because he's cynical, he doesn't realize that the Toa are true heroes, something he doesn't believe really exists. The Toa, instead of being selfish like he thinks they'll be, instead are selfless. They sacrifice themselves to stop him, acting selflessly. Or do they? Maybe their programming is too strong, so they do what they're supposed to despite what they may think otherwise. If Makuta were around after being disintegrated, I'm sure that's a cynical approach he'd take to working out what happened. As I said, there's multiple ways to look at the ending, which I hope gets people talking about the story going forward like G1 was able to do. As the poster boy of Bionicle in general, Tahu is the best choice to be the center of this story arc. Often portrayed as hot-headed and quick to run into action, I spent the first 2 seasons working with him to get him to grow beyond those rash tendencies. By the time of the finale, Tahu actually had the opposite problem, as he was overthinking things too much. However, his tendency to act without thinking came back to bite him one last time as he went to face Makuta alone, leading to the death of the creatures. As well as offering a connection to G1, making the elemental creatures the great beings offered an explanation as to their origins. Official G2 gave us diddly squat as to what their purpose is, and the ending even brought up the questions about why they exist at all, besides to sell toys. If the Toa are the elements, then are the creatures separate manifestations of the elements? Are they separate entities entirely? If the creatures hadn't been official sets, I probably would have thrown them out of the story entirely for how confusing they could have made things. I did end up doing that with Igil, though, when I took Ikumu's transformation into his Toa form in another direction. So much for that magic door. I did take a few cracks at Journey to One in this finale more than I did in the previous seasons.
But unless Ikimu has some sort of magic door we can step in to gain additional power, I don't think we really have any other options. Why is it our duty? Our destiny? Did you ever really stop and think of what those words meant before today? We have a destiny, as in the outcome is predetermined. Is there just some big prophecy out there on the wall with our every move written down before we make it?
I even took a shot at Hero Factory, hee hee.
So what? Are you from some sort of factory that made heroes?
No, that'd be stupid.
I actually threw several references to other media into the movie. Obviously, there are lots of Bionicle references, but I sometimes get a kick out of pointing towards things that I like other than Bionicle. One of those was Pohatu's final line.
I don't want to go.
That's lifted straight from the 10th Doctor regeneration from Doctor Who.
I don't want to go.
And the reason I chose this line for Pohatu's final line is because the voice actor who voiced him, Jittel, used the screen name Jedi Time Lord when he originally started the project. So it was a nice way to tie everything back to the way things were when we originally started recording. Makuta's final line,
"You cannot destroy my destiny,"
is lifted straight from The Transformers, the movie.
"You cannot destroy my destiny."
Unicron says this line when he's destroyed at the end of the movie, but Destiny had never really been talked about at all in the movie. I suppose technically Destiny was a theme of the movie since Hot Rod eventually becomes Rodimus Prime, but it wasn't really overtly stated, so for that to be Unicron's final line was a bit interesting, to say the least. So I decided to repurpose it and use it for Makuta. I think it worked. Since the finale was just 4 episodes, I focused more on trying out some more dynamic shots compared to previous seasons. The spin around Makuta battle shot is a favorite of mine. All in all, though, filming didn't take too long, and before I knew it, I was wrapped up. Hello everyone, Apprentice 12 here. It is June the 26th, 2019. It is approximately 9 p.m. and principal photography for Reiterated is about done. So here we have the last shot that needs doing. So basically what this is, it's just, as you can see, here's because of
reasons like green screen, blue screen, color schemes, keying, and all that stuff, I can't have a green character on a green screen, so I had to do things separately. So because of this, Liwa is being filmed separately, and this is the last shot I need to make everything complete. So I've got things measured up. It looks like this is going to be good, so let's do this. And that's that. It's done. It's wow. It's done. I can't believe that. It's wow. That's almost. I mean, there's still more work to be done. I've got to get the voice actors to get their stuff in. I've got to make the new backgrounds. I've got to actually edit it together. But that's principal photography done, and that. I mean, I've been working on this for so long. I can't believe it's that much closer to done. So.
Filming, of course, didn't mean the end of production. I worked on creating new backgrounds and effects on and off for the next few months as I divided my time between working on my new show, Transformers Knights of Cybertron, coming soon, and my senior year of college. Finally, though, I had all the voice lines in and I was able to start editing. The first act was done in December of 2019, and the other 3 were done very quickly in late January and early February of 2020. The final product was finally released on March 14th, 2020, a day I was not able to relish due to the fact that I was sick with a stomach bug and had to drive myself home 5 hours after what turned out to be my last week at college. As the finale was premiering on YouTube, I was trying not to fall asleep at the wheel of my car due to exhaustion. Only when I made it home safe and sound and slept for a good 12 hours did I finally relax. I left a sappy message chain on Twitter a few days before the premiere, but I'm going to reiterate that here. Thank you so much to everyone who helped make BIONICLE Reiterated possible. Voice actors, the show wouldn't have existed without any of you, so thanks for putting up with my lack of direction and occasional badgering to get lines in on time. Raptor Talent, or Spencer Butler, as he'd probably rather be called, was a breakout star, providing a perfect Tahu and Kimu as well as being fantastic as Skull Slicer. You can find him being incredible in other projects across the internet. Jithil, the voice of 90% of the Stone Tribe, ended up becoming a good friend thanks to this project, and strangely enough, we both happen to live in the same small town. He did tons of incredible art, and he continues to do so on his own channel. I was so happy when the Voltapause sisters agreed to be in this project, with Clinda as Golly and Lena as Korgot. They were both great, and I really wouldn't have been able to do this series without them. You could find both of them doing stuff on Twitter. Scorpion Strike was a great Kopaka, adding a nice warm feeling underneath the Toa Vice's frosty exterior. I really haven't been able to track him down very well, but I think he's around occasionally on the TTV message boards. If you're listening to this, Scorpion, thanks a bunch. I'd of course be remiss to mention the fact that I had LJ as the voice of Liwa. He can play the character in his sleep, and he did a perfect job. You can find LJ on his own channel or the TTV channel where he's often talking about BIONICLE or Ninjago with his co-hosts. Speaking of TTV co-hosts, Messanak and Tenebrae Invictus had small cameo roles in episode 10, Dead Matora was the voice of Bingzak, and Fluffy was the voice of Owa in episode 1. I'm honored to have gotten you guys for some of the stuff in the series, and a big thanks to TTV in general for talking about Reiterated on one of your podcasts, even if I did have to pay you guys $50 to do it. Also, shout out to Vin for his great poster he did for the finale. My friend Lococola stepped up late in Season 1's production to be the voice of Izator when the previously assigned actor had to bow out. You can check out his channel where you'll find us playing games together on the occasion. Dark Takanuva knocked it out of the park as both versions of Boomerang, and you can find him shadow teleporting through the online LEGO community or on his Twitter. Finally, I want to thank my IRL friend Kayam for providing the voice of Vezon. He used to do tons of voice work for me in the past when we lived in the same state, and it was great to do some more recording together for this. He typically doesn't want to be found online anywhere, so if you want to hear more from him, dig through some of my older stuff. He's always a blast to listen to. There's a myriad of other voice actors that had roles on the show, and I can't thank you guys enough for offering your time to help out and lend your voices to this project. Getting this project done has been quite the experience, as it's essentially lasted for my entire college experience. Fitting that as it came to an end, so did the college with the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic. I hope that those of you out there watching this enjoyed the show and that you'll stick around for what I do in the future. As I mentioned earlier, I have a new Transformer show coming and other projects that I occasionally tease on my social media platforms. The links to those will be found in the description below. G2 ending hit me hard, and through this I feel like I've been able to heal a little bit. If you felt anywhere near the same way and that the series has brought you some closure, I'm glad. BIONICLE may not return for a while, or ever, but through the community, it survives. A community united in duty, and a destiny that hopefully will see the theme back someday. For this is the way of the BIONICLE.